Mike, we just want to thank him for coming today. He's actually here with his wife, Ashley. Quick introduction, and he does a better job of telling his story than I do. So he is a graduate from UVU. He's currently CEO and partner at Critical Laser, which is a metal fabrication shop specializing in laser cutting and metal forming. Critical has been in business since 1992. Since taking ownership, Critical Laser has 3 Best of State awards here in Utah for manufacturing. In this past year, 2021, Critical Laser made the Inc. 5000 list, coming in at number 2,456. In addition, Mike is also the CEO and partner at Spire Ranges. Spire is a shooting range construction company, and it also manufactures proprietary target systems. Spire was established in 2017, and Mike has been with the company for the last 2 years. Lastly, Mike also serves as a board member for the Utah chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization. So, big round of applause for Mike.
Thank you, Victoria. Okay, so they told me to stand somewhere near this, but I'm a bit of a wanderer, so if I get too far away, someone just point me back this direction, so you make sure you can hear me. So just along the lines of Christine's introduction, I have to admit I am a metal fabricator by trade and entrepreneur by accident. So this sort of just happened. Also, as a metal fabricator, sometimes my mouth can be a little loud and crazy, but you're all adults. So if I slip with a profanity, I apologize. When I get really excited, those words slip into to what I'm talking about. Also, just as a matter, so you guys understand, as a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, we have a rule in there where we get to what we call the 2 or the 1% of information. So the best way to describe that is where you guys walk by somebody and go, hey, how are you? And they go, oh, I'm good, right? But like they might be having the worst day ever. You're not going to get that from me. You ask me a question, I'm going to give it to you. You want revenue, you want net profits, you want employee issues, ask your question, I'm going to give it to you. I think that's probably the biggest thing you can get out of a speaker series like this and get real entrepreneurs in here who are talking about business. Because we all have different roads in business, but we sort of stumble along the same things. Like everybody's always had a cash flow issue, and everybody's always dealt with staffing or employees or how to grow or grow fast enough, or I'm growing too fast. That sounds like you guys, but that's a problem. You can grow too fast. So real quick, I started, Critical Laser started in 1992. I was 12. My dad started there as a machinist, a laser operator, became the general manager. Then he bought out the original ownership with 2 partners. Then after I graduated UVU, I bought out his 2 partners. And the way that happens is, just so everybody can kind of get an idea of this, because I think the biggest misconception I had is when I was going to start a business or get into business was I felt like, oh, people buy stuff out and they just pay cash. Usually if you're a starting entrepreneur, you don't pay cash, you finance it. So here's what I did. I had a wife and 3 kids, and I went down to the bank without telling my wife, and I took out the biggest equity loan I could on our little condo, and that's what I used, right? So, yeah, I know, right? That face. Dude, I do that. Okay, listen. People do that all the time. Entrepreneurs, we're not smart, okay? We're just we're probably not risk averse would be the terminology for it. So that is not the only time I have mortgaged everything. I've done it a few times. So far it's worked out all right. We're just rolling the dice every time it happens and like hope it goes well. But also I think the key, when I was a young guy trying to get into business, also I had this perception of what an entrepreneur was and how they got there. And I figured like, oh, well, they just, right, like this all went swimmingly and it just went super easy, and that's how they got there. So I started as a business major at UVU. I failed like most of my business classes. Finally, I failed my accounting class, and I was like, that's it, I'm out. And I picked a new major. So I'm a criminal justice emphasizing in law enforcement major. That's what I went to school for. Essentially, I went to school for guns and drugs. It served me really well. Now I do business. And so I think the key to that is that that was a pretty daunting time. Like I was failing college. So Ash and I had been married. Like we just found out we're having a baby. Like it was pressure, and I was failing school. Like failing. And it wasn't, okay, look, let's be candid. This is not the first time I was failing school. I was just telling Parker and some of the guys in the business center that, so I got called in like halfway through my senior year of high school. and the principal said, you don't have a digit in front of the point on your GPA. And I was like, but I graduate, right? And he's like, yeah, you do. And I'm like, sweet, right? And I'm like, I'm out of here, right? Like that was my goal. So, but I got through college, so all right? I got a piece of paper on the wall. But everybody's road is a little different. So the way I got to buy out the two partners at Critical Laser is the business sucked. It was totally tanking. They were doing about $860,000 of revenue. They had $1.4 million in debt. The reason we carry so much debt is we buy big, expensive equipment. So the laser on this website, that'll pull back up. You probably already saw it. So this picture right here is what a laser is. Oh, you can't see it. This video's in the way. It's not going to play. It's okay. So lasers are expensive. Every time we buy one, it's about $1 million and change, $1.2 million, $1.3 million. Typically, you have to put about 10 or 20% down. The SBA will finance the rest. So in a laser shop like ours, I always tell you, we pick the hardest way to make money. Like we have a ton of money in raw goods and equipment. So basically, what we would do is a company who builds these tables would call our laser shop and say, hey, we need these privacy screens on the front. So you cut all those holes and bend them around and then have them painted and then deliver them to us. We'll put the tables together, install them. That's what we do. We're a component manufacturer. So we service companies like Mighty Light, Lifetime. My other company, Spire Ranges, was a shooting target company. Lots of steel, lots of plastic. So basically, back to the business part, they're totally failing. So they're carrying about $1.3 million in debt. And I came to the other two partners. I said, hey, if I can figure out how to refinance this debt and get your houses off of the debt, you guys walk away. That's the deal. And they said, cool, because if we foreclose, the SBA is going to come and take my house, and I don't want that to happen. So deal. You get me off of the loans, and I'll do it. So I called every bank I could call. I called Wells Fargo, Chase, Zions Bank. I talked to local credit unions. I talked to everybody, and they said, dude, you don't qualify. Like, your business doesn't have enough assets to collateralize this. You, as a 26-year-old, just recently graduated college student, you don't have the assets either. So I was like, okay, so how do we work this? So that's when we went and got a mortgage. Super smart, right? So we went and got a mortgage. I'm like, look, I got 40 grand cash, which I took out of my house. And then how else do we do this? And so the bank said, well, let's work it backwards. I had a friend at the bank who said, look, let's see what you can qualify for. So I'm like, okay. So we qualify for $710,000. I'm like, that's like half. So I got 710 plus 40. That's not 1.3. So here's what I did. I called everybody we owed money to. And it's 2009. So the banks are in a little bit of a freak out. And I said, hey, y'all are going to take a haircut. I'll pay you half what I owe you. And everybody said no. So then I actually scheduled a conference call and got Wells Fargo Bank, who was carrying our lasers SBA, a couple guys who had lines of credit, we had lines of credit with, and even American Express, the credit card company. And I got them all into a single conference call. And I said, hey, you're all on the same phone call and you're all taking the same haircut. You're all getting 50% of what we owe you. Or you can come pick up our lasers and we'll walk out. Which they don't want to do because they can't sell the laser. The economy sucks. So the first guy to budge was Wells Fargo. We owed him the most money. And he said, I think I can sell it. At least we get 50 cents on the dollar instead of a nickel or a dime on the dollar. So they did it. So everybody took a haircut. We bought the business. The other partners left. That's kind of a little bit of a touchy subject because one of the partners felt like I did that wrong. He still probably doesn't like me. He was mad. He felt like I should have had to refinance the whole debt. And since I got a deal on it, then our original deal of getting him off the loan wasn't the same value. And I said, well, the deal was to get you off the loan, and we did that. So anyway, partners are tough. As an entrepreneur, partners are really tough. So in that business, Critical Laser, we've got there's 3 partners total. Myself, my dad is still a partner, and he included my mom. So there are days where I answer to my mommy and my daddy when we sit down in board meetings. And that happens. So that's been an interesting dynamic to have parents as partners. In our case, it's been super fun. We have a really good time with it. It's blessed both of our families. We get to vacation together. Business is something in fact, I was telling Christina last night at dinner that we have an interesting relationship. I refer to my dad as Mark when we're at work because we're partners. And then if we go out to lunch, then he's dad again, or around the house, we'll call him dad. And he's been a bishop for the Latter-day Saint Church. So sometimes if I'm at church, I call him bishop. We also live in the same ward. So, so it's bishop, it's dad, it's Mark. It's kind of a juggle. So at Critical Laser, I'll tell you how we got to, so at that time we were doing about $860,000. There's this threshold of trying to get to $1 million. You keep bumping your head on 980, 990. Breaking $1 million is pretty tough. But then once you break $1 million, it's like a sprint to 5. So that's about where we sit at Critical Laser, is about $3.5 million. Oddly enough, we feel like we run a pretty lean shop, pretty tight ship. So the average net profit for what we call a component manufacturing company like Critical Laser or Metal Shop, by the time you get to pay all the bills, you get to the bottom, you get the net profit, right? It's about 6 to 9% on average across the US. Critical last year did, and this is one of those things I'm giving you all the numbers. Critical last year ran a 32% net margin. COVID was really good to us. It's super good. Because what happened was in the global supply chain of things, people were calling China to get their stuff. They couldn't get it. So now you have to source it here in America. We had big bumps in numbers. So companies that we would be a supplemental manufacturer for, we became a primary manufacturer for, and we made a lot of money. As far as the net margin is concerned, we're pretty happy with that. So Critical Laser is a component manufacturer, does a bunch of work for a company up near us called Profire Energy. And Profire Energy got in with a venture capital company called Tamarack. And in just before COVID, February? Ashley's better with the timeline. February before COVID, Critical was doing super good. So we went through all those years of really tough times at Critical where, again, the honest truth about being an entrepreneur, you are going to miss paychecks. Okay, there's going to be Fridays. You're going to write checks out and make sure all your employees get paid. You are not taking a check home. That is perfectly normal. Also, there are days where cash flow just didn't hit the right way, and you on a Wednesday, because payroll is Friday, are going to go to the credit card machine. You're going to run your own personal credit card, your American Express card, for $10 grand, and make sure that money hits your bank account so that you can hit payroll on Friday. So not only sometimes are you mortgaging your livelihood of your family, you're also racking up credit card debt to make sure everybody else gets paid. It can be a tough gig being an entrepreneur. But side note, last year I spoke at my son's high school at Pleasant Grove and got through the entire hour, and I guess I didn't say anything nice about being an entrepreneur because the teacher was like, "But what do you like about it?" And I was like, "Oh, I missed all the good stuff." Okay, so that's the tough stuff. So the good stuff is, Critical, it's 2020. It's February 2020, and Critical's doing so good that we take my wife and 5 kids, and we go to Hawaii, and we're there for a week, and it's the best thing ever. And I don't get any emails, and nobody's calling me, and the business is run itself. We've hit this pinnacle of if only my business would do this. We're there. Super awesome. So I get a phone call from one of the guys at, used to be with Profire, it's now at Tamarack, they're a venture capital company, and they say, "Hey, we have this shooting range company." And I said, "Yes, I'm aware. We don't do work with them at Critical Laser because they can't pay their bills, but I'm aware that you have this thing," right? And he says, "Yeah, so have you seen our cool new office yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen it." He said, "Oh, come down and see it." So I said, "Okay." So I go down, he gives me a tour of this really beautiful new office space, and he walks me into a conference room, and he's like, "Hey, here's the thing. What's it going to cost, and do you have the time to come and run this thing?" I'm like, "Run what thing?" He's like, "This thing." He's like, "The shooting range is tanking. We're doing $2 million in revenue." Same problem. They're doing $2 million in revenue. They're carrying $3 million in debt. They don't have the cash flow. This thing is, it's really bad. In fact, I took it to, after I gave a hard pass, I was like, "No, why would I do that?" right? Like I just got back from Hawaii and you see my tan, like I'm not doing that. That sounds like it sucks. So he said, no, for real, like don't say no. We're gonna shoot a number at you. And I said, okay, here's your problem. Your problem is I'm not leaving a business that I own for a business that I don't. I'm not a CEO for hire. And he said, yeah, we're gonna make an equity play. And I said, all right, well, let's see what it does. So they threw out enough equity that it made me go, oh, that could be a good number. And then I came home to my beautiful wife and I remember all those years where critical laser sucked? She's like, yes. And I'm like, well, do you want to do them again? And she said, no. And I said, note taken. And then we did it anyway. Out of ego, sheer ego. And here's why. Again, all honesty, what happened was I made them show me 3 years of their numbers and books, and it was really, really bad. And then my ego was like, I can fix that. I did it once, I'll fix it again. And so off I go, right, in this adventure, and dude, it sucks. Like, super bad. We had like 14 employees, but we had to cut them all down. Cut them from about 15 employees. We run about 9 now, but we're profitable. So in a year, before I got there, they lost $1 million on the bottom line. This year, we're 800,000 positive. We think we're going to close at $1.2 million positive. So big switch. And I can't tell you that like I'm the only guy that made that happen. So I don't know if I would say that like I think everybody's really good at a few things. I can tell you right now, I'm not a startup guy. Like I don't do startups. I don't have any experience in a startup. I don't really know what that looks like. I'm a fixer, right? Like this company's already broke. I think I can fix it because the bones are already there and I feel like I can put them back together. But as far as like startups and brand new things, that's not me. I wouldn't do that. So Spire Ranges is we do a lot of shooting ranges for like the federal government. We are out at Quantico. We're out at, for the FBI, we're at Secret Service. We do a lot of local law enforcement ranges, Utah Department of Corrections, Florida, Houston County. So what we do is we're a full service construction company. So all those targets you see there, those targets will turn, spin, those lights come on and off. We manufacture all that equipment there, the electronics we source. So what they were doing wrong in this specific case was they were trying to be their everything. So they were calling me and they're like, we need to buy a laser cutter and we need to buy a bender and a powder coat machine and we need to buy this and we need to buy that. And I said, no, that's dumb because there's people who do that, right? I happen to be one of them. We do laser cutting, metal forming. Don't try to do that business. That business is tough. Don't add that to your problem. So we cut Spire down to basically a sourcing company. We source all these electronics, metal parts, we bring them in, we assemble them at our manufacturing plant in Springville, and then we go out and install them. So I think one of the things, I'm going to toss out a couple of little tidbits of information or advice, but as you're getting into something like this, don't try to be everything, right? They're in your business. There's people who already do that, right? And they're good at it. Like, don't be your own accountant. That's not smart. Get a dude who does accounting. Get somebody who knows what they're doing. Same thing with your legal work. We have a great attorney. She crushes it for us. We pay her to be a good attorney because that's what she does. Do what you do. And what we do is we install these things. We're really good at it. What we're not good at is manufacturing, making them, putting all those parts together. That's a whole different business. So in this, when COVID broke out, we ran into, and our still is actually getting worse, having a really tough time sourcing product and parts. So as an entrepreneur, you never really know kind of what problems you're going to get today. And at each different company, we have different issues. Right now, our biggest issue is sourcing. So we like to use Siemens as a manufacturer for our electronics components. They're a big electronic manufacturer. They just gave us a quote on the motors that turn these things at 72 weeks. That's like a year and a half, guys. You're not waiting a year and a half for parts. Like, that's not a thing. And I'm not exactly sure why he thought that weeks was the best way to deliver that message, because it's not. It's not. The 72 negates all the things after that. So, we're out hunting for new motors, and my engineering team is scrambling to find a component part that fits this motor, and that's kind of the panic. So you never know kind of what you're going to get in the entrepreneur world. One of the most difficult things, who in here has already started a business? Anybody? Yeah? Okay, anybody already have staff, like employees? Okay, employees, so both of my teams at both companies understand I'm a huge vocabulary guy. Vocabulary is really, really important. It's not often you'll hear me use the word employee. I find it almost derogatory. Here's why. You fire employees. Those people get fired, right? A team member or a member of your staff is someone you have to let go. And that's a different mind shift in your brain, right? As soon as you start viewing anybody on your team as an employee, then you've created a barrier in which you're ready to let that person move on. Also, my team does not appreciate the word employee because it doesn't make them feel like a member of the team, right? They feel like that word puts them in a box of, separated employer, employee, right? Now, we're no longer friends, right? Employee, employer, that's a whole different relationship. So Critical Laser, we do our Christmas party at our house. Our staff, their team, my team and their spouses or significant others, they come to our house for Christmas. We do that on purpose because we want to create a relationship where they know that we value their contribution to our company. And we value that they are choosing to work for us. They could choose to work anywhere, right? And I'm actually going to correct that vocabulary. They don't work for us, they work with us. Right? I don't have anybody who works for me. I have people who work with me because we all have different roles and responsibilities at work every day. Both companies. Spire Ranges has been really difficult to change this vocabulary. When I got there, they had about 15 employees, and every single one of them brought me a different organization chart. All of them. I was like, there can't be this many org charts, guys. And they all had them broken out by who, and they were so focused on who works for who. Right? Because they had people they didn't like and they didn't want to answer to that person. So they didn't like that person. They moved themselves right out of their little org chart tree. And they're like, I don't want to work for that person, so I'm going to work for this guy over here. And it was super discombobulated. That's the biggest word I know. So it was chaos by all these people trying to decide who they worked for and how the org chart flowed. And they all had these titles. And so at Critical Laser, we don't have titles like at all. In fact, if I were to show you my business card, which I'm horribly not carrying, it has my name on it, and then in parentheses it says, insert really important title here. Like that, we just don't have titles, we don't do that. So I get over here to Spire Ranges, and everybody's like, well, I'm the procurement manager, and then we had like a vice president of sales, like 3 sales guys. Like, I'm the vice president of sales. So I went through and I just eliminated all these titles, and they all lost their minds. It was probably not the smartest thing I ever did. So they all lose their minds. They can't figure out who they work for. They just couldn't get over the fact that they couldn't see on an org chart who worked for who. They couldn't get this team concept. And so eventually, anybody who couldn't figure out the team concept, they don't work with us anymore. And most of them left all by their lonesomes because they couldn't figure out how to do it together. They couldn't wrap their head around it. So, but then we couldn't get over this whole need for titles. So I started assigning random titles to people. I think I made our former vice president of sales our senior vice president of operations and things. And then he has this guy that works with him, not under him, but with him. And I called him the other vice president of the rest of the things. And then I have a chief service and warranty catch everything guy, which is on his LinkedIn profile. That's his title. It's the best. I love it. I actually gave him a raise just for putting that on his LinkedIn. I was like, that's the best ever. Okay? That's dedication. That's team commitment. So the cultures are so different. And so when you bring on staff and you bring on other people and you bring on partners, one of the things that, this is a total tangent, and I might be in trouble for this. So dealing with partners, we have partners at Spire because the venture capital firm is the major investor, and then there's another owner as well as my equity piece. So, and we're all married. So here's the thing: if you ever bring on a partner, you should make sure you get along with their spouse. I'm just telling you right now, because you don't have a partner, you have a partner and their partner. Well, whoever that partner is, that they're going to dictate how long you go to work, when you come home, who's working more hours. We had, at Critical, before I bought out the other two partners, we had a spouse come in and was upset because the offices weren't the same size. They're like, how come this guy gets the big office? So I'm like, because he's in it all the time? Like, I don't know. Like, that's how the walls were built when we got here. It just didn't matter. So we no joke, we moved furniture to make the other guy have that office so his spouse was okay with the office layout. I mean, guys, it just gets that way. So just make sure if you pick up partners or you bring in venture capital or whatever, like go out to dinner together and figure out if you and your spouse or their spouse or significant other or however that works for you, that you all fit together. Not to say you won't have some issues, but we've seen some silly ones. Who gets it? Yeah. So in our industry, it's always like, who gets a truck? Who gets the new truck? So that spouses get mad about who's driving the new truck versus who's driving an old truck. And those of us in the office are like, it's a rotation thing. Like, so one guy gets a new truck this year, and then it's the next guy's turn. But the spouse was like, no, my husband should always have the new truck. I'm like, okay. It's super weird. I don't know. It's super weird. So yeah, here's the cool part. I think the coolest part about being an entrepreneur is after you go through all the tough stuff, because you will, it's going to suck. You have moments where you're like, this really sucks. One of the guys in my entrepreneurs organization was describing the sale of his business, which was like really big. Really big. He said at the time we were talking, I was like, dude, congrats, that's so great. Like the exit, that's the pinnacle. You did the thing. And he was like, yeah, I'm just getting over spending like 2 months of due diligence where every day I came home and just curled up in a ball on my bathroom floor and cried. And I'm like, well, really? He's like, yeah, dude, it's bad. So even though like you get to these points, you're like, it's gonna be great. It's just, there's just always something in there that's gonna be a challenge and it's tough. So as you work through those challenges, the coolest part is when you come out the other side and you see something like it works, like it's doing it. Like you had all these plans and you're like, someday my business is gonna do this. And then you take your wife and 5 kids to Hawaii and you're like, it's doing it. Like it's doing it. Like I didn't get an email, I didn't get a phone call. I just hung out on the beach with the kids. It was great, it was doing it. So then there's not a better value, internal value to that, to see your own success is really cool as an entrepreneur. One of the things, however, that said, not everybody is built or wired to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's spouse or significant other is built or wired to be an entrepreneur. There were times where Ashley would call me on Friday and go, hey, are we getting paid today? And I was like, hard no, way not getting paid today. And she's like, well, here's the thing. We need milk and cereal. So if you could get like $100 for milk and cereal, that'd be like super good. Cool, I can figure out $100, right? I mean, it will get to that, and you just have to grind through it. There's a really good book called Grit. I'm sure you guys as business students are just covered in books. But if I were to give you a couple of recommendations on books, Grit is really good. It talks about the separation between talent and effort and what it takes to be successful. There's another really good book called Scaling Up. It's by a guy named Vern Harnish. He actually founded the Entrepreneurs Organization. Scaling Up got condensed into a different version by a different guy named Gino Wickman called Traction. Super good book. Even better because it's shorter. Then there's one more even shorter than that called 3 Hag Way by Shannon Susko. Those are super good. The reason they're super good, I think, is because they give you an idea of her 3-HAG way is setting a goal out 3 years instead of 5, right? 5 years before COVID, no one's predicting COVID. Like, that's not a thing, right? So it's setting things into 3-year increments of being able to say, hey, look, this is where we're trying to be in 3 years and setting a realistic goal for that. You guys, you're not going to build a business unless you're a unicorn, which some guys have done, or people have done. That you're not going to jump from 1 million to 15 million. Like, it's just not a thing, right? You might with some venture capital, but those guys, those types of software companies, if you guys don't know, I was really surprised to learn this, they don't make money. They don't make money until they sell, right? They get these big evaluations. They're not making any money. Tamarack has a business under its portfolio that has a valuation of I think they just got an offer in the B's, and they said no. And I happen to know the CEO because we see each other all the time. Dude drives a Honda Pilot. Got a business valued in the B's, rolling his Honda Pilot around. It's because there's not any money yet, right? There's not a lot of cash flow happening. So cash flow and profitability, that's the other thing. If I had any advice for you guys, know your numbers. Know what numbers make your business do what it's supposed to do. So we learned at Critical Laser, the key to making money at Critical Laser is we got to work all the hours. So we have a day shift that starts at 6 a.m., runs till 3. We got a swing shift that runs from 3 till 2 in the morning, and then those machines actually are semi-automated, and they'll run by themselves for another 2 hours. So we're on 22 hours a day. That's how we make money. If we're not on 22 hours a day, we don't make money. It's just math, right? Your goes intas have to be more than your goes outas. So you've got to figure out, and that was really Spire's problem when I got there, is they didn't understand, how much it cost. When I asked them, how much does it cost you to make one turning target, they all went, whoa. They could tell me how much a motor cost, or how much this box or controller unit costs, or this PLC cost, these computer chips, but no one could give me a number on exactly how much it cost to build a unit, one unit. So your numbers are key. That doesn't mean you have to be an accounting whiz, because taxes are more complicated than your numbers. I don't know how to do taxes. They make no sense to me. But what I do know is the numbers in my business. I know what buttons and levers to push to get my business to do what it needs to do, and focus on those numbers. That's huge. So I'm right at 12:05. I think was my, because when are we out? 12:20? Yeah. 12:20? Yeah, so again, guys, I will take any question you got. Nothing too personal. I'll give you all the business data.
So with your business that you're in with your parents, is there anything that's hard about that? Do you have any
all the
problems?
things.
And, how do you negotiate through those, and how do you overcome those challenges that you have?
So yeah, that's a good question with family and business and having partners. The one thing that we try really hard to do is at work, we try to be partners at work. So again, I don't call my dad at work, I call him Mark at work, especially if I have the big office, by the way, especially if he's in my big office. I don't call him dad. And he doesn't refer to me as anything but Mike. Also, when my mom comes to those meetings, she's an attorney. So we try really hard to have our documents lined up so everything's super clear. But yeah, it can be tough. There's times where I've gone home to Sunday dinner and I've been mad about how something was negotiated during the week. It can be challenging. I think the one thing that I try to focus hard on is it's just money. So my wife, I have this saying I use all the time. Ashley hates it, but it's just money will make more. So if I'm out spending money or buying something, it's fine. We'll just make more money. So I kind of take that same motto when I'm dealing with parents in a business situation. I wouldn't want money to get in the way of our family relationship. And if it ever got to that, then we would just get out. We'll sell it.
How did you gain the skill to analyze things and find ways to fix them?
Oh, super good question. So how did I learn how to fix things? I broke a lot of stuff first. I think the thing to remember with entrepreneurship is that it is a timeline game. So timeline, Critical Laser starts in 1992, and it's still a total, I was gonna use a naughty word, but my aunt just got here. It's total wreck in 2006, 2007. So what are we, 15 years down the road, and it's still just, and I'm talking like a cargo train wreck. I'm talking like a people train wreck. Like there's bodies everywhere. It's bad, right? So timeline is key. And then I got there, so I took my first equity in 06. I took the last of my equity to become a full half partner in 11. So from 06 to 11, I was a minority shareholder. And then we didn't really start making a really good profit till probably 2016, 17, right? So it's a timeline thing. So in that timeline, I broke a bunch of stuff. I just ran around like mortgaging things and getting lines of credit and borrowing money on my Amex. And then I'd be like, well, that didn't work. So I just learned, don't make that mistake again, right? So trial and error. And then the only other thing that I would say is get a mentor. Get a mentor. Get somebody who's been a business owner that's done it. It doesn't have to be in your industry, right? Like if you're doing software and you talk to a guy who owns a trophy shop or a t-shirt manufacturer, right? It doesn't matter. He's done the business thing. So he can talk to you about employees and staff and budgets and cash flow and all the things that stack up inside that business world. Get a mentor. Huge. I still have one. A guy by the name of Brian Fruit. Brian Fruit owns a company called Lizard Skins. Has anybody heard of Lizard Skins? They do bat wraps and hockey sticks, and they actually just sold to Marucci, and that was a big number. Get a mentor.
So the clients that you earned during COVID that were outsourcing from China, do you think that as like everything goes back to like normal, do you think they'll continue to stay with you, or do you think that they will go back to getting things from China?
Some will. There's no doubt that China is the least expensive option in manufacturing because their government supplements or subsidizes both their raw good and their labor force. They can just produce stuff cheaper. So we will see some stuff go back. Some businesses we've already seen leave and go back to China a little bit. Some companies we've seen, or their rhetoric is right now, that they're going to stay here because they can't afford to deal with really long lead times. China hasn't fixed that yet. So the ability to sell that product right now, have it made right now and sell it now for more money, really less profit though, some companies are doing that. So I think we'll see a mixture of it. Companies staying, companies going.
I noticed that both of the websites for your companies was really good. When did you decide that was an important thing to invest in?
That's a really good question. Our Critical Laser website actually needs to be redone. It's about 6 or 7 years old. It's outdated. We've added some new equipment and things, so we actually need to redo that website. I think really for our type of business, our websites are simply informational, right? You can't purchase product from our website, so we don't need to have like a point of purchase on there hooked to a cart or anything. We're just a landing page for people to Google and go, oh yeah, they've got a website, they're real. And we noticed that people like really pretty pictures. So people like pretty pictures, so we put them on our front page. That's probably, if I'm being super candid, our SEO presence for Critical Laser is probably significantly weaker than it should be. We really sit back on the fact that we're 30 years old and people just call us. So Critical doesn't have any business development. We don't have like a sales guy or we have a website, and that's how people get to us. Yeah, so, but Spire's different. We have a lot of people who look through there, especially for our commercial ranges. So that one, we pay a little bit more attention to, and it has some SEO behind it and some analytics stuff that I don't understand. I know the vocabulary, but I don't really know what it does.
Do you do your human
So we do them separate, and I absolutely positively do not do them on my own. We use a PEO company. At Critical Laser, we use Ampion, which is a staffing company. They're based in Sandy. And at Spire, we use a company called ZAMP. But same thing, they're a professional employer, whatever that acronym means. Yes, thank you. So yeah, we don't do that. We're not, cause simply we're not good at it. Like, I don't know all the HR laws and appropriate lingo and, posters we have to put up and how many times we need to do OSHA training, and they handle all of that. It takes that off of my plate, and it's worth all of the pennies that we pay for that, for sure.
How, with you outsourcing a lot, and with you bringing in people so you can do what you're good at, how do you not, one, want to be in control of everything, and two, find people that you trust?
So that's a super good question. The key behind that, again, is a little bit trial and error. At Critical, we use outsourcing for our powder coat processes, and we went through 5 or 6 good powder coating powder coating facilities before we found one that was really good to us. And then our key to maintaining that is we're super loyal to them and they're super loyal to us. And so that partnership can be tricky, and you might go through a few before you find one that sticks, that you have, because almost, especially in an industry partner like that, Critical sends a lot of powder coat out, over $1 million a year, to one company. And so when you're spending that kind of volume, right, there's a little bit of loyalty in that aspect. They don't want to see $1 million walk out the door.
I really like how you went over how being an entrepreneur kind of sucks right off the bat, and you kind of have to grin and bear it. I feel like everybody I've heard from kind of glosses over that, says, yeah, it sucks at first, but then they dive right in. I love how you're almost excited about it. I'm not as big of a risk taker, so I wondered, how did you feel comfortable taking those big risks, and how did you, I guess, grit through it? What was your drive? What got you through those tough times? I'm sure it wasn't easy by any means.
I would say, again, in an effort of candidness, I backed myself into this can't fail corner, right? If it all blew up, I was in a bunch of trouble. So to get through that was just I stacked so much risk on it that failure was not an option. And in that, so I graduated UVU, bought into Critical Laser, needed to make more money to pay for the mortgage that I took out. So here was my schedule. I'd get up in the morning at 7. I'd go to Critical. I'd be there till 5. I'd come home at 5. I worked a few minutes away. I could be home by 5:05. Ashley would have food on the table. I would eat it really quick. I'd sleep from about 6 till 8:30, and then I got up and I drove down about 25 minutes down to Springville, and I worked a night security job. And I worked night security till 3 in the morning, and then I would drive home and I would sleep from 3:30 till 6-ish. And I got back up again. So yeah, and I did that for a year. She didn't super like that. It wasn't her favorite time in our marriage. I was coming home and sleeping in 2.5 hour increments, and then back somewhere else, right? So I don't really have an answer for how. I think you just got to lean into it.
You mentioned that you did your education in a criminal justice major.
Uh-huh.
How has that served you in your entrepreneurship or lifestyle or anything? Or do you wish you could have gone back and done something else?
I don't know if I can identify something specific out of that program other than the fact that it gave me a sense of success. Once I switched to a program I actually really enjoyed, I did really well. So I wasn't failing out. I did fail out of the business part of school. Switched and was on academic probation. Switched over to criminal justice, and I liked it. And so I just did better at it. So honestly, the best thing I got out of it was I learned that I could be a good student. Because before that, I had a mental block from being kind of in high school and then failing out of the first part of college. I felt like maybe I couldn't do the school thing. But once I liked it, it was okay.
We got time for one more question, you guys.
How do you keep up good communication and like manage your time between the two businesses?
Really clear expectations. So I manage my time. If I were to pull up my calendar, you could look at it. It's very regimented. So I get up and leave the house about 5:30. I'm in the gym at 6. I'm at my desk by 7:30. I have meetings that start at 8. Every day I have a meeting. So I start in Springville at Spire. So I have our first team meeting at 8 o'clock. Then on Tuesdays I have a sales meeting that starts at 10. Thursdays we have an ops meeting. And then I do the same thing at Critical. They don't expect me till about 12:30 or 1. I'll grab lunch in between the two offices. And then same thing. I stack up a team meeting at 2 o'clock on Mondays, 3 o'clock on Tuesdays. Then Wednesdays is kind of an open day where I do a little bit more strategy. And then, so I'm just honestly organized. And I put it on my calendar and I don't miss it. Like I don't miss the gym. I go to the gym. And I don't miss those meetings for almost anything. If I miss that meeting, because to me, it's a respect issue of my staff's time, right? If I'm all of a sudden, oh dude, how embarrassing is that? If I'm skipping meetings, it shows the meeting's not important, right? So if it's not important to me, it's not going to be important to them. And my time is not more valuable than my staff's time, right? They don't work for me, we work together. And I wouldn't be okay with any other member of staff skipping a meeting just to skip a meeting. So schedule and just stick to it. But also, don't go over. So you can do, as an entrepreneur, if you push too hard, just as an anecdote, you can do long-term serious damage to your body. Like, I still have sleep issues from from doing that year where I was sleeping in 2-hour increments. Still totally messed me up. Also, that lifestyle led to not eating very good food. So I was 33 when I was diagnosed as a diabetic. Too many Cokes all day long, too much fast food, not enough gym time, not stellar genetics, but really more the pace. I mean, when I asked my doctor, like, how am I a 30-something-year-old diabetic? And he's like, yeah, your schedule's crappy. So be careful, take your personal time. Go to the gym, go outside and hike, do whatever clears your mind, because you need that brain capacity. If it's filled with your business stuff all the time, has anybody ever heard you can't see the forest through the trees? You have got to get an elevated view of your business from up top and be almost unemotional about it. Businesses are data. It's math, right? So get outside of that emotional part of your business where you're like, I bleed for this thing. Nobody cares. Like every other entrepreneur who you talk to and you're like, it's so tough. They're like, yeah, it's tough. It's tough for everybody. It's all tough, right? There's a football coach, Lou Holtz, that says you can complain about your problems, but 90% of people don't care, and the other 10% are glad you got problems. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to power through. But get a mentor. That's my last, get a mentor. They're huge.